Morning, everybody. I'm sure the last thing any of us want to hear about these days is conflict, but we certainly have had our fill in the news. So I'd like to tell you that I know you don't want to hear any more about politics, but it's part of our lives these days. And the war that's going on right now in California is the water wars, which have been going on for over 150 years or so. And to be honest, I'm not sure that we're winning. I became aware of these wars back in 1978 when Janet and I bought our first boat up in the California Delta. This is the most beautiful place, and I don't know whether everybody is aware of the California Delta, but there's over 1,000 miles of navigable waterways just to our east. The war was over the construction of a conveyance at that time called the Peripheral Canal. And our governor at the time was Jerry Brown, AKA Governor Moonbeam. And Jerry wanted to build this canal and send the water down to Southern California. The canal was stopped by a statewide referendum in the early 80s. So California, however, never stopped trying, and the war continues. I have an unending amount of respect and admiration for our speaker today. She has almost single-handedly stopped the Southern California Mafia from drilling holes in the Sacramento River to send the Sacramento water south. The tremendous impacts that this will have on our farms, our lives, all of us and our families in the years to come is almost unimaginable, but it's not incalculable. Restore the Delta needs our help and our financial support now, today. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you today's speaker, Barbara Barrigan-Parrilla.
Thank you. That was very, very kind, Joel. The truth is, though, like most people, what we do with a lot of support in this world and a lot of goodwill and a lot of help from friends. So I'm just one person in a network of committed people who really wants to see not just a bad project stopped, but the right plans put into place for managing our precious water supply with a changing climate and to leave our environment stable and healthy and better off for our kids and for our grandkids today. Our mission is to save the San Francisco Bay Delta estuary for our children and future generations. We work on water quality and quantity protections in relation to public health, protecting the public, protecting water supply for all its beneficial uses. Can we go to the next slide? Today, I'm going to cover why the San Francisco Bay Delta, why does it matter? How to solve the conveyance challenge, because there are definitely good positive solutions. What we see as the biggest threat to California's water supply and the San Francisco Bay Delta estuary, harmful algal blooms. And I'll bring you up to speed on why this is becoming such an important issue. And then we're going to talk a little bit about state water management and regional outcomes. You can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to give you real quickly Estuary 101, kind of the science and the engineering technical part of what's happening with Delta management. We're just going to go through a couple maps today to refresh people's memories of how the system works. Next slide, please. The great challenge, of course, in California is that most of our rivers and streams and creeks, which drain into the San Francisco Bay Delta, are in the northern part of the state. That is where the vast majority of our water supply is. And about half of our waters from our surface water system actually drain through the estuary. And then again, we have the majority of our population in the southern part of the state where there is less water supply. We have, and it makes something very clear, we're one California. We know we're always going to have to share water from the north to the south. We've never been about oh, shut off the pipes and let's keep all the water. That's not a solution. What we're interested in, though, especially with what's looming ahead for all of us with climate change, is doing so in a sustainable way, putting systems into place that will wring every last drop of water out of the system so that we can all stay healthy and well and prosperous in the decades to come. Next slide. I love this map. It works really well. People in the Bay Area forget that they're connected to the Delta. When I use this map with people in the Delta, they get really confused that they're connected to the Bay Area. It is one watershed. It is the San Francisco Bay Delta Estuary. And if you look at the estuary, it is an inverted delta. It's one of 2 inverted deltas in the world. It is primarily freshwater in the interior, up where I am near Stockton, gradually becoming saltier. The demarcation line where you start moving into brackish water is at Big Break in Antioch. The G&H sugar plant in Benicia 50, 75 years ago was located there because they would actually pull fresh water out and be able to process their sugar with fresh water. So because we're exporting so much water out of the system, that demarcation line has moved further into the interior. You will hear a lot from people about the fact that it is a variable system, and that is true. But variability has been a little bit overstated. If you like to geek out on technical analysis of water, there are some great histories that have been published by the Contra Costa Water District at their website about the history of freshwater fluctuation within the estuary. Science tells us when you look at what has happened with plants, native plants within the Delta, that the Delta really only in the interior ever salted up really before our full dam projects were brought online, like in the 4th, 5th year of drought in August and September. There is variability in the system because we do have tide waters that come in and mix, but once you hit our end of the Delta, it's really mostly a predominantly freshwater system. Fisheries over the years, the fish have evolved to survive in this system, being able to move from freshwater to saltwater. Next slide, please. People forget about our history. We've been working for months trying to get photo credit on this. This is a photo that circulates through the Delta of a dock in Sacramento at the turn of the last century. We used to can between that time up till about World War II, 5 million pounds of salmon out of the Delta. And that's when you still had commercial salmon fishing within the Delta itself. Now we have fishing season closed regularly. We're struggling to keep salmon alive. So to me, that's heartbreaking. And I just like to remind people that this is part of our public trust legacy. It's part of our heritage as Northern Californians. And when you listen to the food versus farmer debates, you have to remember salmon was a significant part of the nation's food supply. And it still is for our Northern California Indian tribe brothers and sisters up along the North Coast and in Northern California. Next slide, please. The Delta is the largest stop on the Pacific Flyway. You saw my background photo today. I took that photo out 2 years ago in the Delta. If you ever have a chance to come out at the beginning of November for the Sandhill Crane Festival, it may not be happening this year. Hopefully it'll be back the year after. The tours are just absolutely incredible. They're magnificent birds. And it's a fun activity. It's a great thing to bring family with. Next slide, please. So water that is taken right now from the Delta moves through 2 projects. One of them is the Central Valley Project. The Central Valley Project exports about 45% of the water that is taken from the Delta. And that water mostly goes to the Westlands Water District and to industrial agricultural units on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley along the I-5. Basically where you see all the almond trees when you're driving south. Next slide, please. And of course, the State Water Project is what provides water supply for Southern California. It's a big energy user. It uses about 20% of the state's electrical grid, because it's hard work moving that water up over hills into dams into Southern California. Out of that 55%, you have water that does go to the coastal regions, not a huge percentage. You have a fair amount, maybe about 25%, 30% that goes to Kern County Water Agency. That is Stuart Resnick's Empire, Palm Wonderful products, all those wonderful nuts. That most of that land did not have groundwater supplies, so they're highly, they rely highly on State Water Project water. Presently, the primary proponent of the Delta Tunnel project, because it's now back as a single tunnel, is the Metropolitan Water District. Next slide, please. Just another view of the State Water Project, just to give you a scope, because you can't really see all that much when you drive sometimes past on the freeway. Next slide, please. This is the new proposed Delta Conveyance Project. If you will look, the notice of preparation for the environmental impact report was released 6 months ago. We just completed a scoping period. The yellow portion on my left, when I look at it on the left side, I guess it would be yours too, left side of the map, is pretty much the route that they were proposing last time for the twin tunnels under Governor Brown. They are analyzing in the purple now an eastern route for the single tunnel. They have cut the size of water exports through the tunnel from 9,000 cubic feet per second to 6,000 cubic feet per second. So what does that really mean? The Sacramento River, which is where they will be diverting the water from up at the north end of the Delta, the top of the map, average flow right now is probably 18,000 cubic feet per second. So they're looking at building a project that will take away a good, in today's water flow standards, a good third of the river system. There are a lot of problems with this new alignment, and even though they're analyzing both and they claim they haven't made a determination, we have reason to suspect that they really favor the new purple route. It's easier for them to get from the Port of Stockton into rail lines, into roads for construction, so it drives down their costs. The reason why it's so problematic for us is that it is extremely close to a large urban population. Stockton is one of the 13 biggest cities in California. It has the largest environmental justice population per percentage of population. The people that live around the port, suffer from air quality, water quality challenges, and live at the bottom 97 percentile for public health. The other thing that is kind of concerning, which you cannot see fully on this map, last week we were notified that they may be taking the South Delta pumps completely out of operation and extending the pipe just south of that Jones pumping plant to Bethany Reservoir and connecting it to the Central Valley Project. So what does that mean? That means that they lose all incentive to move fresh water through the entire estuary. The fresh water that we need for irrigation and for fisheries and for urban water use. Remember, in the 5 Delta counties, we have 4 million people who live here who are dependent on the Delta as their water supply. And that pump, the new pipe that they're looking in, isn't just going to be operated during high flows. It has the capacity, the ability to run continuously. Next screen, please. This is just a reminder on the Central Valley Project side, Westlands Water District and the big ag units other than Kern County, that a significant amount of this land is drainage impaired. And that means that it belches pollution back into the San Joaquin River, because when you apply irrigation water, it doesn't, it doesn't drain properly. Why is that a problem? Because if you go back and look at the tunnel map, you're taking the fresh water out from the Sacramento River and you're putting more polluted and salt water back into the Bay Delta estuary, loaded with selenium and boron and bromides. It flows from the delta into the bay, impacting the ecology for the entire system. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Again, we have 4 million residents. 34% of our residents make up what is defined legally as an environmental justice community. Those are people of color who live at poverty level or below, or do not speak English as a first language. They are not represented equally in water planning processes. They have difficulty accessing materials, and particularly during COVID, this has become a real problem. The state continues to move forward with the project, deeming it as essential. And we have really struggled to be able to bring in groups when people are struggling with things like right now, like stopping community spread of COVID, survival, eviction, and putting food on the table. Next slide, please. Presently, I don't know if it's hit Bay Area news. It definitely has hit Sacramento news and some state news we've worked on. We are suffering from an outbreak of what is called harmful algal blooms in the Delta and in Delta communities. And what these are algal blooms that turn toxic. They're loaded with cyanobacterias, and surface waters have become dangerous. Stockton right now is surrounded by dangerous waterways. In fact, the bacteria level is so high in these blossoms that it's above 220 times above the danger threshold. Why is this a problem? Because the blooms are proliferating every year. They're growing. And not only do they contribute to fish contaminated problems and degraded water quality, they're a threat to public drinking systems. If you build the tunnel, you're going to have less fresh water moving the system. And we fear that with climate change, these harmful algal blooms are just going to continue to grow and grow. And they are spreading into the San Francisco Bay region. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. The causes of algal blooms, and these are, you're going to laugh at the photo with the thumb up at the top. Oh, no, if we could go back to that other slide, thank you. The photo with the thumb in the top, but it was because I was desperately trying to actually show people how thick these blossoms are. What are the causes? Warmer water and air temperatures. Our air temperatures, you know, we had our first week of 100-degree weather out in the valley at the end of May, beginning of June this year. Sunlight, lack of fresh water flow. We're holding our water too long in our dams during the summer and in the fall because it has to be sent down later for irrigation purposes. And then we have problems with discharge and nitrate pollution. We can't necessarily control the warmer air temperatures or if the water warms up or the sunlight, but more than ever, we need freshwater flows moving through the Delta to combat this problem and really to push the state to clean up discharge and nitrate pollution. These photos are important because the photo on the top right is a historic park in Stockton called Lewis Park. People water skate out of here. Danger levels are 220 times over dangerous level. Literally last time I was out, I was kind of waving down people and telling them to get out of the water. Public doesn't understand what's happening. The picture on the left with the unlucky thumb in it really shows you the thickness of these algal blooms. They're called benthic mats. They're now permanently with us in the Delta and spreading because of poor water quality conditions until we change how we manage the Delta. And then at the bottom, that is a slough that runs in downtown Stockton. And if you take a close look or you click on it, maybe later if you download the PowerPoint presentation, we have homeless people camped along this waterway. It's a particular concern for us because the water is toxic and dangerous. They do try to use the water for sanitation. And we've just had difficulty with funding and resources for getting our homeless people relocated off of the rivers. Next slide, please. In California, in 2019, we had a record almond crop, even though we don't have enough water to keep our rivers and our drinking water systems healthy. We produced 2.5 billion pounds of almonds, and we farmed those almonds on 1.39 million acres of land. Almonds are using 10%, probably more like 12% now of our developed water supply. So our question is that sustainable? We don't think so. If we really want to solve some water challenges in California, we really have to move towards sustainable crops. And we have to consider, does it make sense to plant almonds on desert drainage impaired lands? We don't think so when we have a limited water supply. Okay, how am I doing for time?
No, I think you're fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Next slide, please. There are better solutions, but unfortunately, we still have a lack of political will with the Newsom administration. We were overjoyed when he was elected. He stopped the Twin Tunnels project. He had people from his administration reach out to work with us. In turn, we produced significant reports on climate change, recommendations for the water portfolio, recommendations around flood management. And sadly, it's not just us. Literally everyone in the environmental water community that is worried about climate change, water management, stopping toxic algal blooms, protecting our public trust resources, we just haven't been able to get through that the plan that he is recommending still doesn't work. One of the things I skipped over about that tunnel is the tunnel costs have gone up because construction inflation, things rise. They're now looking at $15.9 billion instead of $11 billion as today's cost for one single Delta tunnel. Once you put in 5% construction inflation annually and the cost of repaying the bonds, you're looking at a $50 billion project that will produce a third less water than the last round that was proposed under California Water Fix, with a limited water supply. And of course, if you are the agency's Metropolitan Water District that has to repay that bond debt, you're not going to sit back and allow for them to turn on and off that pipe. Because if you don't have the water to resell, you can't make your bond payments. So we do not see the tunnel project at all as sustainable. We have recommended water projects on significant levee improvements that are needed anyway to protect you with sea level rise in the Bay Area, all the way through the estuary and up into the river systems. In the water portfolio recently put forward by Governor Newsom, there is some investment in regional water projects, not the level of investment that we really would like to see. We think if that's done right, the tunnel just doesn't need to be built. And we also need to fix existing infrastructure. A significant portion of our dams do not meet seismic safety standards in California. Our canals that we already have need repair. We think we should fix what we have first. Sadly, the building and construction trade union groups are working very hard to move this project forward, and we keep telling them there are so many other things in water that need to be built that are sustainable, that we have work for them for 50 years. They don't need the tunnel. Sadly, the Newsom administration, their portfolio plan did not prioritize this approach, but they continue to push for a tunnel and voluntary agreements for flows where people with water rights can give up how much water they want when, rather than having set regulated standards for what we need. And of course, we have problems with enforcement against pollution dischargers. Last thing I guess I would like to leave for with this group is that at the State Water Board, the Bay Delta plan for setting flows for the Bay Delta estuary, we're hoping is going to come back. The voluntary agreements, and that plan was supposed to be implemented at the end of 2018. everyone's been playing with these voluntary agreements that just have not happened. One of the groups that's really given us the hardest time, sadly, has been the San Francisco Public Utility Commission. They do not want to give up a drop of water for flows for the Bay Delta estuary. Now, I can sit and complain about Metropolitan Water District for hours. It's a hobby. But SFPUC hasn't done half of what Metropolitan Water District has done to implement conservation, to reduce water dependence on our delta and our river systems, to secure a better and sustainable water future for San Francisco. So I'm going to add into the chat, you want to follow our work because we work on these issues, but we work on them from a Delta perspective. I also recommended this group to work out and follow the work of Peter Dreckmeyer, who is with the Tuolumne River Trust. He's actually situated in the San Francisco Bay Area. He calls people out and he asks them to join to help him manage and put pressure on your mayor and on SFPUC to do the right thing for protecting water and water supplies. And he needs help. I think you may be the perfect group to come to his aid at times to help protect our water supplies for the future, for our kids and for our grandkids. He's a lovely person to work with. So Peter and I work on the same things. He does it from a Bay perspective. I do it from a Delta perspective. And when it comes to these big events, we kind of merge our work together. So it would make sense for you all to be in contact with him as well. So I'm going to put his contact information in at the bottom. You may want to have him come in and speak. He is really the expert on SFPUC. We divide up our work. He tells me to do something on that end and I do it, just like when I talk to him about what's happening with HABs, the harmful algal blooms in the Delta. So he's someone you should also be in contact with. So I could stop there if I haven't put you all to sleep. I hope not. I'll take any questions that you have.
All right, Barbara, that was fantastic. And I know we've got a bunch of questions for you. So it is 8:32. Some of our members do tend to go off. So if you guys need to go someplace, and don't worry about it. But Barbara is going to stick around and answer some questions.
Yes.
We have one here from Tom Kowalski. Said, are there plans in place, future plans for wastewater collection in Southern California? And then the second part of that was, are there future plans for desalination along the California coast?
Yes and no. Let's talk first about wastewater reuse, water recycling. There is a water recycling plant that MWD keeps dragging its feet on having implemented. I understand it's going to move forward eventually, but they always seem to kind of put it out there as the either or. Either you spend money on that or you spend it on the tunnel. We work with a lot of groups from Southern California and everything from Sierra Club to property owners in Pasadena who tend to be a more conservative group. And they all want to see good water conservation projects in Southern California because they understand that if you do it right, you know, they're putting out from their wastewater treatment system, I think it's 1 million gallons of water a day into the ocean. That water should be recaptured, reused, recycled for outdoor irrigation. Half of the water that they export from this area is still used for outdoor irrigation. And so they have to get smarter about how they do that. Really, cisterns in yards for outdoor landscapes should become a necessity. On the desal part on the coast, it gets complicated. Desal in this country lags behind in technology compared to other parts of the world. I can't answer for you why we can't seem to move forward doing a better job with it. I personally think because even though it's an expensive technology, it's labor intensive, we don't understand why it can't go solar as it is in the Middle East. I think it's because they haven't figured out still how to make it quite as profitable. San Diego has done a very good job with their desal plant, and they've actually had to shut it off at times. They've had so much water in storage. But you still continue with the same resistance with Metropolitan Water District. A lot of the environmental community that I work with really doesn't like desal because you have the waste, it heats up the water. You know, everything we do, we tend to create more problems. I'm kind of the mind that if you did everything we recommended in the portfolio first, even with climate change, it would take care of things for a good 30 to 40 years. And what that does is it buys you time to perfect desal, to get caught up on the technology and to get it implemented the right way to do the least harm.
Barbara, I have a question. This is Rick Wilson. Actually, 2 points of information. The first one is when I moved out to the big town of Rumsey, California in 1986 on Cache Creek atop the Capay Valley, the first farmer I met said, Rick, there is no such thing as almonds. They are called almonds because you have to knock the L out of them to get them off the tree. But on the serious side, if anybody is interested in finding out what happened with the water in this country, the best book I ever read, and I think it's at least 20 years old, is called The Story of the American West and Its Disappearing Water Supply. And if memory serves, it was written by a guy named Phil Reeser. And if you want to find out how Los Angeles stole our water, that's your book.
It's a great book. And there are a couple other great books, Cadillac Desert. To your claim about how I say almonds, I am a Chicagoan. I moved out here. I moved out here in my early 20s. They will forever be almonds. My parents were one of the first families that worked on creating the Indiana Dunes National Park. They worked to save that seashore, and it became a national park this last year. So that is my training and my background on kind of how I ended up in all this work. And moving here, learning about water in the West, yes, it took a lot of reading when we started Restore the Delta for me to catch up because I grew up with an abundance of water. So it's really quite a different system in California.
Thank you.
I have a
Joel,
question.
go ahead.
I'd just like to remind everybody that Barbara and her crew, which is very limited, are fighting a heroic battle, and they can use all our help. So getting involved with the PUC, which our PUC has its own problems, we won't even go in there, and also making contributions. And I know we are all being taxed for contributions these days, but helping Barbara to continue this important work. The problems of the Delta are incredible, but they're ours as much as they are the Delta. So we need to get active and we need to be involved. The algae blooms that she was showing you are so toxic that if you had a dog up there that drank the water, they'd be dead.
Yeah.
So it's really that important. And also, Barbara hasn't even begun to touch the politics that are involved with our senior state senator and Stuart Resnick, who owns a great chunk of the Weston's water district, and the reason why he needs the almond water, but that's not my area of topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to say if I could just add one quick little thing, just take a second. Restore the Delta has really struggled even pre-COVID. Because of politics, it's very hard for us to get grants because if you speak out against a governor, you're not loved necessarily by foundations. However, we are receiving some grant funding and we're really looking for bridge funding. We are actually going to create a citizen HAB center. And we are starting out of Stockton. We are working with kids from the environmental justice community who are in high school and college. And we are going to be teaching them how to do water quality sampling, how to do the photographs, how to do the microscopic work around HABs, and to be able to report their data to the State Water Board. It's just like COVID. We have no tracking system in the Delta, and if you don't track it, you can't manage it. And then from there, we are going to be taking and replicating it in the small towns throughout the Delta so we can really get a handle on it. It's going to become vitally important work, and it's great work because it solves an environmental problem, but it also builds skills in a community that needs opportunity and educational opportunity. So anything that we can get to help bridge us over, we know we have funding coming at the end of the year. Because of COVID, we have to move into a bigger office. I work in an office that's the size of a dining room, but we can't do that safely with youth anymore if we're going to start this program. So we're struggling and we can use help. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Let's everyone give Barbara an applause here. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Can you stick around for a few minutes if anyone else has any other questions?
Sure.
I have a question on, in Southern California, are they getting any water from the Colorado River and the Hoover Dam?
Yes, they are, but those flows have been diminished because that system is overtapped. Interestingly enough, yesterday there was an article that San Diego Water Authority, which just won a large lawsuit with Metropolitan Water District, is looking at running its own pipe into the Colorado River again and going independent. They don't want water from up north, and they feel that Met has taken advantage of them, that they are at the end of the line. So there's going to be divisions and problems down there. But Colorado system has been used and abused as well. Again, we are not putting best practices together in how we're going to farm and food production for the future. And that is essential to saving our rivers and our waterways in the West.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I see Tim Murray's on the call. Tim, do you have a question for Barbara? All right. Anyone else? Christine, you always have a question. Oh, Patricia, go for it.
Well, you know, I always like to know, Barbara, at what point in your life did you become so passionate about the Delta?
We moved here about 17, 16 years ago. And I was actually working at the Planning and Conservation League, and I was working on air quality, and I still work on air quality issues here. HABs create significant air pollution also. So a couple people started talking with me, and I became very familiar with the Delta. And when I realized what was at stake, historical salmon runs, beautiful birding areas, farms that are the oldest farms in California. We have 6- and 7-generation farmers within the Delta who farm pretty sustainably. But then I think when I realized what the impact of this project would be on communities that had been redlined 100 years ago, that suffer great economic injustice, and how the water management of water from Stockton to Bakersfield really results in inequity and extreme poverty, that just kind of pushed me over the edge that, okay, well, this is what I can work on to try to bring some peace and some recovery to people and to the planet together.
Barbara, you are living proof not all heroes wear capes.
I will make a comment only that I want to thank Barbara for not only seeing an issue, but taking such a lifelong stand to make a difference in resolving some of the problems. I was not aware of the scope of the things going on, nor the importance I've guessed at, but when we look at things we take for granted, I'm speaking certainly for myself, the Delta and what was going on, that I was totally unaware of that, and I will look into it. I'm not sure what I specifically can contribute, but I thank you for your lifelong commitment to trying to resolve some of these things. And thank you for coming here to this group. It's a very diverse group. Your message will be shared and spread because of this. So
thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Craig, this is Tim Murray. I've been having problems with both my video and my audio today. And I just wanted to say, Barbara, I was on the Baykeeper board for a number of years, and I don't know if you have any affiliation with them.
Yes.
Baykeeper was also very involved with Lake Tahoe and clearing up some of the algae on Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, first of all, what your connection is with Baykeeper, if you have any, and secondly, how we contribute financially to your efforts.
So I'm connected with Baykeeper. In fact, yesterday morning I was on an excellent webinar by their lead scientist, John Rosenfeld, formerly of the Bay Institute, on how flows are needed. We don't have enough flow in the system to help the habitat that is in place to hit the salmon doubling goals. So sometimes in water management with the state, you keep hearing about the need for habitat. They want to put, everything becomes an issue for them of gravel rock beds. And science is really showing we don't even have enough water for those salmon rearing grounds in the system that already presently exist, let alone putting new ones in. We work closely with Baykeeper. They are our great partners. Again, they're another one of those groups, just like with Peter Drickmeyer, where we work together on the whole system. They will work in that area, we will work in this region, and we will make sure that our work and our messaging complements each other and matches up. So we have a great relationship with them. And they like working with us because they understand the connection between the humanity of water and then protecting the river itself. Some groups lose sight of that. So that's why we're very comfortable working with Baykeeper. To donate to us, if you go to our website, restorethedelta.org, you can donate directly through the website. And our address is up there if people prefer to send in checks. Either way, that's kind of how we work and how we move.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It's really remarkable, and it just shows, like everyone else said, everyday heroes that we don't know every day are just fighting for the environment, for the purity of our water supply. It's amazing what you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question, Barbara.
Sure.
Betty Taish here. Thank you for your excellent, informative presentation, yet very depressing. And your work is just amazing. I just wish there was this huge vacuum cleaner that could go and scoop up all the algae.
Right.
And I live in Mill Valley, and there was a lot of whatever in the water about 2 months ago. And it's really discouraging and depressing, and it smells and so forth.
Yep.
Anyway, my question is, can you discuss the farm versus the wild salmon and the safety of eating salmon and so forth?
So the whole farm versus fish debate was created by, well, it'll come back to me in a moment. It was the same marketing firm that did all the big tobacco ads. They were hired by Westlands Water District, and they were funded a $5 or $6 million campaign starting 15 years ago to make fun of the Delta smelt and to make fun of the fisheries and to promote the idea that farmers are so much more important. But the truth is the state refuses to do a full cost benefit analysis on the allocation of flows or around the Delta Tunnel project. In fact, this time they said they will not do a cost benefit analysis until after the environmental impact report is completed. If you put together all the economies tied to the San Francisco Bay Delta estuary, including our own local farm economy, commercial salmon fishing, crab fisheries, which are tied to the health of the estuary, tourism in the San Francisco Bay, sports fishing up and down the rivers and through the system, we believe that it is a significantly larger economy than the almonds on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley, which are only 0.3% of our ag economy, and our ag economy in California is 2% of our GDP. The reason why they are such formidable political units is that wealth is so completely concentrated with really just several thousand families. It's kind of the best example of what has gone wrong with inequity in California. It is really a plantation economy where you have very rich people and you have workers who are just barely getting by and living with the pollution on the bottom. So, you know, we did a pretty good job under the Twin Tunnels project, really kind of standing that whole narrative on its head. But we will probably end up back in court. We will be working with the same economists again to really try to push forward that if you're going to do this right, you have to do a full cost benefit analysis. We had one done by an environmental economic firm out of Oregon. And what makes the most sense to us is, look, Southern California is a huge economy. It's a couple $1 trillion a year. They do need water from the north. We have to keep the Bay Area healthy. We have to keep our rivers healthy. What makes the most sense is to retire that large strip of land down the San Joaquin Valley that uses 45% of the water and that is drainage impaired. Pay off the farmers, pay them off handsomely, convert their farms to solar farms and dry irrigation, kind of like wheat farming in the winter. And then you have enough water supply to make it to support your population, stop the unsustainable agriculture, and really do some good environmental economic restoration in the San Joaquin Valley and bring it into a future economy. But so much of the growth in the planning around the San Joaquin Valley is really on unsustainable measures. And the sad part is they get their hooks into every political leader in California. The one thing that we're very happy about is that Senator Harris seems to be pretty balanced in how to work on things, and has been good to us. It doesn't mean she lines up with us perfectly, but at least she listens, and she works with Jared Huffman out of Marin County on good, strong water measures. And so we're seeing some hope with that, but we sometimes wonder if Governor Newsom really just wants to be the governor or president for Westland's water district. We're puzzled.
Thank you.